Hi everyone, it's Sandy and today I'm back with another Top 5 Wednesday video. Top 5 Wednesday was created by Lainey from Ginger Reads Lainey. I will leave her channel link and the Goodreads group down in the description box below if you want to check it out. This week's topic is your favorite required reading, which is basically any of the books that you had to read for school. When I have to read a book for school, I tend to just go into it with a really negative mindset, and I know I shouldn't do that, but I just don't like the idea of having to read a book. Not all of these books are my favorite, but they are books that I've enjoyed more than other books that I've had to read for school. The first two books that I'm mentioning are books that I've read this past school year, which was my senior year of high school. Coming in at number 5, it is the book Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. One of the main reasons why I really enjoyed this book is because it has to do with magical realism. This whole novel is structured by months, so there are 12 chapters for the 12 months of the year. Although it is structured by months, the whole book isn't necessarily told in one year. They're told in different years, but in that month, if that makes sense. But each chapter has a cooking recipe, which is mentioned throughout the actual chapter of the main character cooking. So since it has to do with magical realism, the dishes that the main character cooks tends to have an effect on the people who eat it. The effects of the food that the main character makes has to do with how she's feeling. So one time she was feeling really upset, and when she made a cake, people who ate it started crying because she was feeling really upset. I think that was really entertaining to read because there are a few really weird effects of the food that she makes. When I read this book with my class, Thanksgiving was coming up. Since this book has to do with cooking and cultural food, my teacher had this idea where we would have a party where everyone brought food from their own culture and we would all stuff our faces, and it was just a really nice experience slash reward for finishing this book. So I thought that was a really cool thing that my teacher did. So the next book coming in at number 4 is Native Son by Richard Wright. This book is set in Chicago in the 1930s. I don't want to say much about it, but it follows an African American man who accidentally commits a crime and attempts to cover it up. And when I say accidentally, he does accidentally commit a crime. And if you read this book, you'll know more about why this happens and how it happens. I really like the themes relating to this book because it really made me think, and when you read a book for school, there is normally a discussion part that comes with it, and I really enjoyed being a part of the discussion in my class. What I really liked about my class is that it was a pretty small group. There was 16 people, and I think because of the small class, it just made the discussion part a lot more comfortable for me to participate in. I felt more comfortable sharing my opinions on the book and what I thought about some of the issues that arise throughout the story. I really like the whole crime aspect in this. I love seeing how the main character tries to cover the crime that he committed up and just getting into his thought process about everything. There were a handful of books that I've had to read for my senior year of high school, and I think Native Son is probably my favorite that I've read. The next two books are books that I've read for my junior year of high school, and I've actually had a more free choice picking these books out. Each quarter we would have an independent reading project. We get to pick a book to read, and the only requirement was that it had to be a nonfiction book. And so these two books are books that I picked myself, and I think that's why I enjoyed them a lot more. And coming in at number 3, the book is Brain on Fire by Susanna Cahalan. I'm probably pronouncing the author's last name wrong, so sorry about that. This book is about a woman who's perfectly healthy. She has her life ahead of her, and suddenly she's in the hospital and she's labeled as violent, psychotic, and she doesn't remember how she ended up in the hospital. So throughout this book you learn more about what happened to her, and I think that was really interesting. This book revolves around a disease that affects this woman's life, and this disease isn't that well known. Doctors are struggling to find out what's wrong with her and finding the proper treatment for her. I was really fascinated by this person's experience, and I was just really into the story. We get to see how this disease affects her physically and mentally, and also how it affects her relationships with the people she loves. Overall, I thought it was really interesting reading from her point of view because she's the one experiencing this. Coming in at number 2, I picked The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This happens to be one of my top 14 books of 2014, so just wanted to put that out there. I just really liked reading her story. Honestly, I don't know what to say about this, but I really loved it. I don't read that many nonfiction books, and this is probably my favorite nonfiction book that I've read. This book follows a young girl who has a very dysfunctional family. Her dad is an alcoholic, and she does have a pretty quirky mom. The author does have siblings, so the children of this family basically learn to take care and protect themselves. I've heard that this book was going to be made into a film, produced and possibly starring in by Jennifer Lawrence. What? I hope that happens because I would love to see this book on the screen. Overall, this book was just beautifully written and I highly recommend it. And for my number one spot is a book that you probably wouldn't expect, but this book is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Yep, that's right. I had to read The Hunger Games for school. I was in 8th grade when I read this book, so as an 8th grader who wasn't that into reading, I wasn't happy about having to read this book. Thank you so much to my reading teacher because she introduced The Hunger Games into my life. The Hunger Games is one of my favorite trilogies to this very day. The Hunger Games is what made me realize that I do like reading and I want to read more books. After reading this book, I went up to my teacher and I was like, "Do you have the second book? Because I need it in my life." And she gave it to me. I read the second book in like 2 to 3 days, and immediately after reading it, I went up to my teacher again and asked for the third book, and again, I finished it in like 2 to 3 days. I was obsessed. After reading the whole trilogy, I googled stuff about the Hunger Games and found out that it was going to be made into a movie, and I was just so excited, and I can't wait for Mockingjay Part 2. This is definitely my number one spot, and I don't have more to say because I love the Hunger Games. That is it for my Top 5 Wednesday video. Let me know some of your favorite required reading down below in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!